Thank you. Good afternoon or good morning, parents. We're so pleased to have you join us for Alvin ISD's Understanding Dyslexia virtual parent workshop. My name is Sandra Burton, and I'm one of the dyslexia specialists for Alvin ISD. This is my 35th year of teaching in the district, my 10th year as a dyslexia specialist. My colleague, Lauren Beline, and I will be presenting the workshop today. Also joining us are Dr. Bruton, Associate Superintendent of Federal and Special Programs, and Leavette Peralta, Dyslexia Specialist, who will be monitoring the chat box for us today. The session is being recorded and will be shared with you along with answers to your questions. What is dyslexia? The word dyslexia comes from the Greek dys, meaning difficulty, and lexia, meaning language. Let's begin our session with a true-false activity to discover facts and myths about dyslexia. Please put a T or an F in the chat box as we examine each of the statements. Statement 1, slow reading speed can be an indicator of dyslexia. Is that true or false? That is true. Most dyslexics are males. Sorry for showing that answer already. That is false. Number 3, dyslexia can be genetic. Dyslexia can be genetic. That is true. It can run in families. Statement number 4, dyslexia is primarily a visual problem. That is false. Dyslexia is not a problem with vision or how a person sees. Statement number 5, gifted individuals cannot be dyslexic. Very good. That is false. There are many gifted people who are dyslexic, actors, scientists, judges, presidents. Statement 6, dyslexic readers use different brain pathways than typical readers. That is true. Statement number 7, dyslexics exhibit low achievement in all academic areas. That is false. Dyslexia is specific to reading and writing. Individuals with dyslexia can be brilliant in many areas. Statement 8, letter reversals indicate that the student has dyslexia. That statement is false. That's contrary to popular belief, but that is false. Statement number 9, difficulty in spelling can be an indicator of dyslexia. Individuals with dyslexia can have difficulty with spelling. Statement 10, dyslexia is a language disorder. Statement number 10 is true. Dyslexia is a language disorder. Statement 11, dyslexia can be cured. That statement is false. Individuals who are dyslexic will always be dyslexic. They can learn strategies to help compensate for their dyslexia. Statement number 12. Individuals with dyslexia most often have difficulty with the phonological awareness or the ability to manipulate sounds in words. That statement is true and pretty much the definition of what it means to be dyslexic. So to recap our myths and facts activity, these statements are true. Slow reading speed can be an indicator of dyslexia. Dyslexia can be genetic. Dyslexic readers use different brain pathways than typical readers. Difficulty in spelling can be an indicator of dyslexia. Dyslexia is a language disorder, and dyslexics most often have difficulty with the phonological awareness or the ability to manipulate sounds in words. These statements were false. Most dyslexics are males. Studies show that there is a relatively even distribution of males and females. Dyslexia is primarily a visual problem. This is false. Dyslexia is characterized by a difficulty in language. Gifted individuals cannot be dyslexic is also false. Twice exceptional people can be dyslexic and gifted. Dyslexics exhibit low achievement in all academic areas is false. Individuals who are dyslexic have average cognitive abilities. They're just as bright as everybody else. Letter reversals indicate that the student has dyslexia is false. Dyslexia is not a problem with vision. Dyslexia can be cured is false. People who are dyslexic can learn strategies to help compensate for their dyslexia. This definition that I will show you shortly is from the Texas Dyslexia Handbook. So here is the definition of dyslexia. Dyslexia is defined as a specific learning disability that's neurological in origin, which means that it originates in the brain. It's characterized by difficulties with accurate and/or fluent word recognition, by poor spelling and decoding abilities, being able to break the sounds of words apart. These difficulties typically result from a deficit in the phonological component of language. The phonological component of language has to do with the smallest sound of language, understanding that the word cat has three sounds, k, at. Changing the k to makes the word mat, and so on. This is often unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities, so that they're bright in in all areas. The difficulty is specific to reading and writing. It's also unexpected in the provision of effective classroom instruction. So the students have been receiving effective classroom instruction. They've been attending school regularly. They've been receiving interventions and are still having difficulty with those specific areas. Secondary consequences may include problems in reading comprehension and reduced reading experience that can impede growth of vocabulary and background knowledge. So if something is difficult for students or individuals for that matter, they may tend not to like it, so they would do it less, right? They would read less, they would write less because it's not enjoyable, it's difficult for them. They may also have difficulty in reading comprehension because if they're reading slowly, they may have forgotten what they've already read. So this is the definition of dyslexia that is found in the Texas Dyslexia Handbook. Next, we'll watch a video entitled, "What is Dyslexia?" Please take note of any ahas or surprises that you notice in this video.
Take a moment to read the following. How was that? Frustrating? Slow? What were those sentences about? They're actually a simulation of the experience of dyslexia, designed to make you decode each word. Those with dyslexia experience that laborious pace every time they read. When most people think of dyslexia, they think of seeing letters and words backwards, like seeing B as D and vice versa, or they might think people with dyslexia see saw as was. The truth is, people with dyslexia see things the same way as everyone else. Dyslexia is caused by a phonological processing problem, meaning people affected by it have trouble not with seeing language, but with manipulating it. For example, if you heard the word cat and then someone asked you, remove the C, what word would you have left? At. This can be difficult for those with dyslexia. Given a word in isolation like fantastic, students with dyslexia need to break the word into parts to read it. Fan-tas-tic. Time spent decoding makes it hard to keep up with peers and gain sufficient comprehension. Spelling words phonetically like S-T-I-K for stick and F-R-E-N-S for friends is also common. These difficulties are more widespread and varied than commonly imagined. Dyslexia affects up to 1 in 5 people. It occurs on a continuum. One person might have mild dyslexia, while the next person has a profound case of it. Dyslexia also runs in families. It's common to see one family member who has trouble spelling, while another family member has severe difficulty decoding even one-syllable words like catch. The continuum and distribution of dyslexia suggest a broader principle to bear in mind as we look at how the brains of those with dyslexia process language. Neurodiversity is the idea that because all our brains show differences in structure and function, we shouldn't be so quick to label every deviation from the norm as a pathological disorder, or dismiss people living with these variations as defective. People with neurobiological variations like dyslexia, including such creative and inventive individuals as Picasso, Muhammad Ali, Whoopi Goldberg, Steven Spielberg, and Cher, clearly have every capacity to be brilliant and successful in life. So here's the special way the brains of those with dyslexia work. The brain is divided into 2 hemispheres. The left hemisphere is generally in charge of language and ultimately reading, while the right typically handles spatial activities. fMRI studies have found that the brains of those with dyslexia rely more on the right hemisphere and frontal lobe, brains of those without it. This means when they read a word, it takes a longer trip through their brain and can get delayed in the frontal lobe. Because of this neurobiological glitch, they read with more difficulty. But those with dyslexia can physically change their brain and improve their reading. With an intensive multisensory intervention that breaks the language down and teaches the reader to decode based on syllable types and spelling rules, the brains of those with dyslexia begin using the left hemisphere more efficiently while reading, and their reading improves. The intervention works because it locates dyslexia appropriately as a functional variation in the brain, which naturally shows all sorts of variations from one person to another. Neurodiversity emphasizes this spectrum of brain function in all humans and suggests that to better understand the perspectives of those around us, we should try to not only see the world through their eyes, but understand it through their brains.
What were some ahas or things that you noticed that surprised you.
Do you want it in the chat?
That's fine. In the chat would be great.
Okay.
The coding of the words. How common it is. The decoding visual.
I love what Michelle said about that dyslexia is no longer treated as a disorder, but a different way of seeing things. Yes, that's amazing.
Yes. Yes. Many times when I've shown this video to teachers, they're surprised that it's so common. Up to 1 in 5 or 20% of individuals can have dyslexia. It's on a spectrum, right? So some individuals may have a mild case of dyslexia, while others may be more severe and in different ways. Some may have more difficulty with reading than spelling, and some may have more difficulty with spelling than reading. Also, that it doesn't have to do with vision. It's more of a language and how manipulating language. So here are some dyslexia indicators, or some things that would be noticed in individuals with dyslexia in relation to oral language. Individuals with dyslexia may be late in learning to talk. They may have difficulty pronouncing words. When children are little, like 2 and 3, it's common for them to say effluent, right? But as students are older and 3rd and 4th grade and still having difficulty pronouncing those long words, like saying pescetti instead of spaghetti, or effluent instead of elephant, that's that difficulty with the hearing and the manipulating of language and words. Difficulty following instructions, confusion with directionality words such as before and after, right and left. Individuals with dyslexia may have difficulty learning the alphabet, nursery rhymes, or songs, difficulty understanding concepts and relationships, and difficulty with word retrieval or naming problems. So, for instance, a student may say the person who cooks instead of a chef, or they may say that thing over there instead of being able to recall and pulling out that word from their brain. So as we learned in the video, the word retrieval takes a longer pathway in the brain. So sometimes they'll just say that thing instead of waiting to pull out that word. Dyslexia indicators in reading once students begin school. We'll notice that students will have difficulty with hearing and manipulating those sounds and words, being able to identify the beginning sounds, the middle sounds, the ending sounds, being able to put sounds together, being able to take sounds apart. Also being able to change sounds. For instance, in the word cat, change the ah to and you have cut, that type of activity. Stumbling through or guessing at longer words as they're reading, and a slow, laborious oral reading. It's very slow because they have to take their time to look and sound out every single letter. Students will have difficulty learning to read, difficulty identifying or generating rhyming words or counting syllables in words, knowing that the word computer has 3 syllables, knowing how to clap it, computer. Indicators in written language once students begin school include trouble putting their ideas on paper. They can tell you they have wonderful ideas in their brains and they can explain it to you, but it's getting it from their brain to the paper where they have difficulty. There may be many spelling mistakes. They may score well on weekly spelling tests, but continue to produce spelling mistakes in their daily work. So they're not applying what they're learning for their spelling rules and spelling patterns. They're not applying it in their own writing. They may have difficulty in proofreading. They may spell phonetically by sound versus applying spelling rules and recognizing sight words, such as for the word said, they may write S-E-D instead of the common spelling S-A-I-D. They may have poor syntax or difficulty creating well-formed sentences in their writing. So Sally Shaywitz, in her book, Overcoming Dyslexia, has identified a sea of strengths model of dyslexia. So while students have a decoding deficit, so it's very specific to reading and writing and the letters and sounds of the language, they'll have strengths in other areas, such as a reasoning strength, concept formation, which would include making generalizations and categorizing, comprehension strength in listening comprehension. They may have difficulty in reading comprehension, of course, but their listening comprehension could be a strength for them. A strength in general knowledge, a strength in problem solving, a vocabulary strength, and critical thinking strengths as well. So while dyslexia is specific to reading and writing, individuals with dyslexia would have other strengths. So when students come to the dyslexia program, they learn certain strategies. I'm going to pass on to Ms. Lauren Boleen, who is a dyslexia specialist for Alvin ISD, and she is going to continue with the presentation for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandra. So I'm Lauren Boleen. This is my 8th year in education. The last 8 years I've spent working with kids in special education. And in the past 4 years, I have focused in on students with dyslexia. So I wanted to start this portion to talk about the 2 programs we offer for our dyslexia intervention. Both programs use tools and skills taught with us, with the teachers, and then the students can then go out into their classrooms and decode everything from single syllables to multisyllabic words. The program that they use in elementary, I just kind of wanted to give you a visual. You might not be able to see it because of my background. But it's called Basic Language Skills, and it was developed by Nighthouse. And it covers everything that you see on the screen. So the 6 syllable types, reading words in isolation, syllable division, scientific spelling, fluency, multisensory grammar, writing, and metacognition skills. Once they leave elementary, if they're still within the dyslexia intervention program, and they go on to secondary, junior high, high school, we use Reading by Design, which was developed by the Region 4. And Reading by Design teaches the same skills that you see on your screen, but goes deeper into comprehension as well. Next, I want to talk about accommodations. And I want to preface by saying that accommodations are very individual to what the students need. So if you have a specific question about your child's accommodation, I strongly recommend reaching out to the dyslexia teacher on your campus or the counselor. So accommodations are given to students to help break down barriers. They change how students access the curriculum, not what they're learning. The main goal is to minimize or eliminate the effects of the student disability. So that kind of goes back to breaking down the barrier that the disability might put up. But it does not, the accommodations do not reduce learning expectations. Accommodations include services and or supports to access content and instruction. And then it allows students to accurately demonstrate what they know. So I just have to stress that the purpose of the accommodation is to break down the barriers, is to reduce or eliminate the effect of the student's disability on their learning. So a really great way to look at it is that accommodations are not advantages that students get. We're not trying to do equality in the classroom, more so equity. We want students, every student, to get what they need in order to show that they're successful. So accommodations, a good way to look at it as well, is that they level the playing field. So accommodations level the playing field for students with dyslexia and other learning disabilities too. And these two pictures kind of show, you know, if you give the child or all children the same thing, someone's not getting what they need. But if we provide the equity in classrooms and we give the accommodations to students, then everyone can be successful. Another great picture that I'm sure you've seen online, I've seen it swirling around a couple of times, is that we want, for example, the child to climb a tree, right? But not everyone can climb a tree. So accommodations change how they climb the tree. We give them the supports they need, but it doesn't change the expectation of what needs to be done. Next, we're going to focus on why do schools provide accommodations. The simple way is we have to by law. There's two ways to get accommodations. One through the Section 504 Rehabilitation Act of 1973. This prohibits the discrimination against people with disabilities and provides equal access to education. The other way to get accommodations is through the Individuals with Disability Act, or IDEA. This is special education federal law, which provides for free and appropriate public education for students with disabilities in the least restrictive environment. It's very important to note that in the state of Texas, students who are dyslexic receive accommodations either through Section 504 or IDEA. Now, you're probably thinking, who determines how we get these accommodations, how my child gets this accommodation? There's two ways. One is through a 504 meeting. There's a 504 meeting, or I'm sorry, a 504 committee that includes the parents, and y'all talk about what the student needs, and you determine which specific accommodation they're going to receive based on those needs. The second way is under IDEA. The same goal, we're trying to find the specific accommodation for what students need, but this is through an ARD committee, which also includes the parents too. And then here are some examples of classroom accommodations. Questions and answer choices read aloud in all subjects. Extended time or shortened assignments. So maybe your child will have extra time completing the assignment, or the assignment gets shortened, like reduced. Frequently misspelled word lists for writing assignments. Use of audiobooks for independent reading. Do not penalize for spelling errors on written assignments. Preferential seating. And preferential seating can look like your child needs to be right next to the teacher because that's where he or she does their best learning, or maybe they need a quieter area in the room. trade student notes for teacher notes, check for understanding, use of a blank place marker, like an index card, just to kind of help guide the child as they're reading, or if they're working through like large text, to kind of help have a place marker for them as they're going through it. So those were classroom accommodations. Here are some examples of testing accommodations. We do try to mirror the classroom and the testing accommodations for all the students. So this is text-to-speech or oral administration, which is very similar to question and answer choices read aloud. Usually the text-to-speech is done virtually, like online on a computer, and oral administration is done by a teacher. Content and language supports for online testing. This personally is one of my favorite accommodations for students, because it's if they're going through, for example, the reading star, and they just read this long passage and they're on question 5, and the star wants them to go back to paragraph 2 to answer the question. Well, that's a lot of going back and forth for our students. So the content and language supports will put extra support on that question, so they can roll over, they get their mouse and they roll over the question, and the paragraph will pop up. We have small group testing, extended time, spelling assistance, and this can look a couple different ways. They can be provided the frequently misspelled word list. They can have a spell check function if they're taking a test online. So once again, it just kind of goes back to either the 504 committee or the ARD committee to decide what is best for your child. And then the last one is reading aloud to self, usually using a whisper phone. And so now we talked about classroom and testing. So let's bring accommodations into our home. Accommodations for homework really should mirror what they're receiving in the classroom accommodations. And it's very important for parents to know which accommodation their child is receiving, so that way they can practice those accommodations at home with their homework. So for example, if a student receives oral administration, it's okay to have the parent read the questions and answer choices. The goal is for the student to practice the content. So if they're doing a written assignment and they use the spell checker function or the commonly misspelled word list, having them practice that at home is great. And it makes the child feel more confident with their accommodation. One way that we present our accommodations is through a function, or through an extension, I should call, called Read and Write. This is an extension through Google Chrome, and it provides supports and tools for common files that are usually accessed through Google Drive. So it has text-to-speech and speech-to-text. Speech-to-text is where they speak it and it types for them. There's text prediction, so it will start predicting the words as they type. Dictionary, there's also a picture dictionary too. A web search, screen mask, record reading aloud. There's highlighting specific information and taking that information they highlighted and placing it into a Google Doc. And there's also page simplification, which removes any distractions on the page. There's so much that Read and Write offers that I put this 2-minute video in to kind of give you a visual to see how Read and Write can be used. Sandra, you might have to turn on your mic for this.
Click on it and this toolbar appears.
Perfect.
First of all, let's read some text out loud. Put the cursor anywhere you want. Click play and it starts reading like this.
Honey is a kind of sugary syrup.
And you can stop at any time. Pick a word, like this, and use the dictionary to explain what it means. And there's a picture dictionary right here too. Click on the prediction icon, and Read and Write will help you by guessing words that you're typing. Put your mouse over the suggested word to hear it read aloud.
Insects.
If that's the word you're looking for, click to insert it. Click here near the right of the toolbar to change settings if you want to. There are lots of different reading voices to choose from. And you can change reading speed if it's too fast or slow. You can hide the toolbar anytime you don't need it by clicking on the Read and Write icon again. Okay, Read and Write isn't just for Google Docs. You can use it when you're browsing web pages with Google Chrome too. Click the Read and Write logo in the address bar, right here, and the toolbar pops up. Most features are pretty similar to when you're using Google Docs. With reading aloud, this time you can hover over to hear the text.
I had a chance to talk to the show's creator.
You can stop reading anytime. The dictionary lets you look up what words mean and hear the definitions read aloud. Double-click to highlight a word and press the dictionary button to see what it means. Click on the dictionary to listen to it.
Adjective, having life or vigor or spirit.
And of course, there's the picture dictionary too. Double-click to highlight a word, then click right here to see images related to the word you've selected. This fact finder is really useful if you're doing homework or researching an assignment. Highlight a word and click here to see search results from Google. Thanks for watching.
Read and Write is one of my favorite extensions that we offer through Alvin ISD. My secondary dyslexia students rely on this heavily in all their core classes, especially as the content gets harder. This extension has really helped bring extra support and breakdown for those content areas. Another way that I kind of talked about with accommodations is audiobooks. And there are so many advantages to audiobooks. We have increases reading speed, expands vocabulary, builds background knowledge, reduces working memory deficit, improves comprehension, increases reading accuracy, and combining print and audio actually increases recall 40% over just print alone. This slide, I wanted to give you some visuals as to the statistics behind audiobooks. It can improve comprehension by 76%. It increases the reading accuracy by about 52%. Kids can also access this, and this is super important. Kids can access a book 2 grade levels above their grade level through an audiobook because our dyslexia students have such great listening comprehension. And we offer a variety of ways to gain access to audiobooks. So you can have the specific accommodation for Learning Ally, which gives your child access to about 80,000 audiobooks, including textbooks. The library, your school library, offers Sora. If you're interested in Sora, I would email the librarian and she can give you more information on how to sign up for that. There's also a website called Get Epic or Epic. And this is more for elementary age students, but there's tons of audiobooks on there. And then the Brazoria County Library System also offers a audiobook program too. So now that we've covered a ton of accommodations, read and write features, and audiobooks, you're probably thinking, how else can I help my child at home? First, I would celebrate your child's successes. They're doing so much here in a school day. And praise and praise and praise them. Share your difficulties with them. Oftentimes, parents either have dyslexia or they see signs that maybe or indicators that maybe they do have it. And so sharing those common difficulties really creates that bond. Read aloud to your child and have discussions about the book to check for understanding. Have your child listen to audiobooks. Communicate with your child's teacher. If you have a question about an accommodation or maybe what the dyslexia intervention program looks like more in depth, please reach out to the teachers. And then teach your child to advocate for themselves so they can ask for what they need. Once they come to secondary, as soon as they start in the fall of 6th grade, we really start teaching them those sentence stems to advocate for themselves. But they're never too young to learn advocacy early on. And then here are some resources. I'm going to pass the mic back over to Sandra.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. So this is the list of resources that will be included in the presentation that you will receive. So the links are live. You should just be able to click on those links to take you to any of those websites for more information. So we've gone over characteristics of dyslexia, what it is, what it isn't, what are some indicators of dyslexia in language, reading, and writing. We reviewed accommodations, classroom instruction, and so if you have any further questions that were not addressed or that will not be able to be addressed today, you can contact your students, the dyslexia specialist on your student's campus. You could contact the counselor on the campus, and they can direct you to the dyslexia specialist on your student's campus.